Good afternoon, friends. It's Tuesday, February 9th. Time for my thoughts of the day, a little different from the reflections in the past. For today and tomorrow, at least, I want to do something a little different. And I want to focus on a single issue today and tomorrow. Because a number of you have already started to ask me about when I think we will return to in-person worship services. And I'd like to give you my own thoughts and perspective on that deep concern. You may remember back in March of last year, almost 11 months ago now, we went virtual in our worship life. And I, for one, had hoped that that would be a short-lived virtual experience. I wasn't willing to invest a lot of energy or time or money in it, but that didn't go that way, did it? On March 22nd, we held our first virtual service because on March 15th, the sermon was thrown out and we sat around and talked about what were our fears and our worries, our hopes about COVID coming. It had begun to creep into the United States. And many of you stayed home that day. You voted to not be in worship because you were concerned. I even had a pastor friend in a nearby congregation who emailed his congregation Saturday and said that he would not be coming to worship. Somebody else would be leading service that day, March 15th, but he would not be coming. Now, I know that he had underlying health concerns, and he was very worried about what COVID-19 might do to him and his health. I don't remember where the state was, so to speak, on that day. I do remember that earlier than March 22nd, we heard from the governor about a stay-at-home order trying to flatten the curve. How's that worked for these last 11 months? Nevertheless, on the 16th of March, that was the Monday after our last worship service together, the steering team and I emailed each other about where we were and what we were going to do, and we unanimously decided to suspend in-person gatherings. But I had to figure out, and I gladly accepted that challenge, how to figure out how do we keep worshiping, and how do we finish our Lenten journey for that year. The struggle of this last year has been one of experiencing openness and closedness. And it's been a real roller coaster, and not one that I have enjoyed in the least. Listening to many of you, you have not liked the ride either. Now, I miss seeing you on Sunday. I hear that some of you also miss seeing one another on Sundays. I miss not having us gather for worship. I hear many of you miss not gathering for worship. I look forward to getting ready, dressed, if you will, to worship each Sunday. And I hear some of you look forward to getting ready, dressed for worship. And some of you are enjoying a new dress style, getting ready for worship, as you experience it online. My heart does ache at not having the chance to see you and catch up with you each Sunday. My heart aches not having the opportunity to gather in a room for a Bible study and ministry team work. My heart aches that our staff has not been able to gather weekly for our meetings, nor the almost quarterly evening gatherings we had for dinner and fellowship that we so much enjoyed. My heart aches for those who have not been able to shift with us into this virtual worship life. For those who cannot join us either on Facebook or YouTube, those who are not connected online with us. And I have tried, sometimes failed, to keep in touch with those folks. But they have certainly been in my prayers regularly during this time, and I hear from a great number of you how you are keeping in touch or in prayer with those folks as well. My heart does ache, however, for those simple things like a hug outside of worship, for a greeting with one another. And I've said it before, this is not the way that I expected to end this chapter of ministry with you. On the flip side of that all, of those personal laments, if you will, is the reality that others have been able to join us in worship that was not possible before. We regularly have people joining in our worship services from Maine, Nevada, Maryland, Oregon, and Arizona, as well as those in California that don't live in our immediate area. Who knew that our faithful witness would be so powerful and far-reaching? I also know I have grown very comfortable with the reality of a single worship service. I can't deny it. There is some joy in knowing that I will be home around 11 each Sunday. And I never imagined that I would be so excited about having the opportunity to eat lunch and be ready for the rest of the day before noontime. That's never been part of my schedule for 40 plus years. Yet I know that when we return, sometime in the future, and I hope it is before I retire from this place, we will likely return to our earlier worship schedule of 2 services. So now about returning. I'm glad to hear that the daily COVID-19 numbers are declining in our state and in our county. Have we turned the corner? I certainly hope so, but I'm still anxious about it. Vaccines are heading into arms, and I'm jealous of those of you who have gotten your shot or shots, especially those who are younger than me. It's not fair. I'm entitled to it. Doesn't that sound like privilege? To those of you who have either Pfizered or Modernered, great. I'm happy for you. To those of us who are waiting, may that time be short. So much seems to hinge on those 2 shots or that single shot if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is approved soon. I feel we need to continue to build those numbers of people vaccinated to ensure that our immunity level increases. I also had a very strong reaction to the Supreme Court decision about in-person worship. I never believed that the closure of worship was a violation of my rights. I don't see anywhere in the Constitution that it says that. I do believe, however, that the case of closing worship was done out of love and care for one another. So I am frustrated with pastors and leaders who demand that in-person worship must continue. Do we miss seeing each other and being with each other? Yes, absolutely. Is it necessary for worship? No. Perhaps it is that I am willing to go kicking and screaming into a future that I didn't want, didn't like, because I'm not willing to stay in a routine that just because it's the only routine I know and believe has to be the only way to do things? Have we been less faithful because we have not been gathered in this sacred space on top of the hill? No. Have we been less of God's people because we have not gathered together inside the house we built for God here on Trinity Drive? Again, no. Our faithfulness is not dependent on where we gather, not dependent on being in the same room or under the same roof. That may be what we are most comfortable with because we've done it for so long, but it doesn't define our faithfulness. So it makes me wonder, as Rob asked way back in May, should our traditions control how we worship? No. Should they rule our life? I say no again. Now, Martin Luther was asked at one point about doing ministry during the plague, and the plague certainly ran rampant through Wittenberg and Germany and Europe during those times of Luther. The question really was, should one flee from the plague? In responding, he said that all decisions should be made from a command to love the neighbor. I believe that we also will make decisions to return to in-person worship life based on love of neighbor. I believe that we will return when it is safe to do so. and that conditions will allow us to worship safely. And that's what I want to talk about tomorrow in my thought for the day. Perhaps I'll actually get it posted before 5 o'clock at night. So until then, I still do look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Well, seeing your comments at least scrolls through the screen as I sit at home about 11:30, eating lunch and watching worship. Until then, please remember, wash your hands a couple times a day, 20 seconds at a time. Use hand lotion to keep them nice and soft so they don't get dry and irritated. Stay home if you're not feeling well. Love one another. There's that word, love, it's important. Practice that important physical distancing. Wear those masks. And of course, Sergeant Esterhaus dismisses us this evening for our rounds of ministry with the words, "Be careful out there."